I stood frozen in the living room, remote control still in my hand, when my 17-year-old daughter looked right through me and asked her father, "Dad, do you hear that strange noise?" Not to me, not even glancing my way. As if I was a faulty appliance humming in the corner. Grant didn't lift his eyes from his phone. Just the house creaking, "Sweetheart. Old place." After 20 years of marriage, I was no longer Ella, no longer mom, not even an annoyance worth acknowledging. I had become background static. White noise. A rusting pipe in the walls. If you believe that no one deserves to be erased from their own life, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps these stories reach others who need to hear them. Now let's see what happens next. That day marked the 28th in what I had started to call the erasure. 28 consecutive mornings when my cheerful good morning floated into the void, unanswered. 28 dinners where I walked into the kitchen only to find empty plates, the food already eaten, no chair left for me. 28 days when my presence had been edited out of the family frame, that I had begun to check mirrors compulsively, half expecting not to see my own reflection. I had Googled at 2 in the morning. Is it possible to die without knowing it? It wasn't one cataclysmic event. It was the steady drip of absence. The way conversations died when I entered a room. The way laughter dimmed and eyes slid past me. Like windshield wipers brushing off rain. One evening, I reached for the remote lying on the coffee table. Lila snatched it up before my hand touched it, clutching it to her chest. "We're watching something," she said flatly. "Just 5 minutes," I pleaded. "I'd like to see the news." 5 minutes? No way. This is the best part. I stood there, hand dangling uselessly, while father and daughter turned their backs in unison, a wall I could not breach. I retreated into the kitchen where the breakfast dishes still sat in the sink. Though I hadn't cooked that morning, I opened the trash bin and found the receipt crumpled on top. 2 blueberry pancakes, 2 orange juices, 2 coffees. Timestamp 7:15 a.m. They had gone out early deliberately, without me. My chest constricted. It was no accident. Not forgetfulness. A deliberate cutting away. At first I had tried to rationalize. Grant was busy at work. Lila was a teenager, self-absorbed. But patterns formed. Too precise to dismiss. I was being ghosted in my own home. And then came the proof. I noticed Grant's leather briefcase propped near the back door. Odd, he usually left it in the study. A small instinct made me unzip it. Inside was a neat stack of papers. Divorce papers. His signature already scrawled at the bottom. A post-it note stuck to the top. "Sign these." That was all. Not even a please. No conversation, no explanation, just an order. As though I were a temp at his office, expected to initial a memo. Something hard crystallized in my chest. I placed the papers back exactly as I had found them. I did not sign. Instead, I climbed the stairs, pulled out my old suitcase, and began to pack. A few changes of clothes. My laptop. The photograph of Lila as a toddler. Grinning on the swings. I scribbled a note and left it on the counter. Going away to think. Don't worry about me. Then I wheeled my suitcase down the porch steps. No one looked up. No one called after me. The front door stayed shut. I walked to the train station under the cloak of night, the wheels of my suitcase rattling over cracked sidewalks. For the first time in months, my lungs filled completely. Each breath hurt, but it was real. On the platform, as the inbound train thundered toward me, I realized I wasn't running away from my marriage. I was running back toward myself. When the train pulled into my hometown, dawn was breaking. The Reed house stood exactly as I remembered. Pale blue shutters, a wind chime tinkling by the porch. I rang the bell, and within seconds my mother's voice rang out, warm and astonished. "Ella." She pulled me into her arms before I could answer. Behind her, my father, Thomas, appeared, robe loosely belted, eyes widening. For the first time in months, someone looked at me directly, calling me by name. I broke. Words spilled out in gulps and sobs as they guided me to the kitchen table. The smell of coffee, the clink of mugs, ordinary sounds, but they anchored me. I told them everything. The silence. The avoidance. The meals without me. The divorce papers. My father's jaw tightened. a quiet fury rising in his engineer's precision of mind. My mother, Eleanor, shook her head, her expression both fierce and sorrowful. "You let yourself become wallpaper, Ella," she said softly. "And wallpaper eventually gets painted over." Her words stung, but they rang true. My younger brother Marcus arrived later that morning, having rushed over from his apartment. He listened quietly, then put a hand over mine. "I've been through divorce," he said. "The worst part is not the legal fight. It's realizing how little you matter to the person you gave everything to. Don't waste your energy proving your worth to someone who's already decided you have none." Tears blurred my vision. "But Lila, my daughter, Marcus squeezed my hand. "She's 17. Right now she thinks siding with Dad is survival. Give her time. Don't sacrifice yourself waiting." Their voices wove around me like a lifeline. For the first time in nearly a month, I wasn't invisible that night in my childhood bedroom, staring at the familiar ceiling. I understood. This was only the beginning. I hadn't yet seen the depth of Grant's betrayal, or how far he had already gone to erase me, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I would not be signing those papers, not yet. The second week back in my parents' house, I started noticing the cracks in Grant's plan, because the more distance I had, the more his strategy came into focus. What I'd thought was just silence and coldness wasn't random. It was deliberate, systematic. One morning, while sipping coffee with my father in the kitchen, he asked, "Ella, did you check your joint accounts?" The question jolted me. I had been so consumed with the emotional wreckage that I hadn't even thought to look. My father, ever the methodical engineer, insisted we log in together. When the screen lit up, I felt the blood drain from my face. Our once solid savings account had been bled almost dry. Little by little, over months, Grant had been transferring funds into his personal accounts, always in increments small enough not to trigger alarm. Always at odd hours, early morning, late night, like a thief in his own home. He hit me like a tidal wave. He hadn't just erased me emotionally. He'd been erasing me financially. I sat back in the chair, my hands trembling. He's preparing to leave me with nothing." My father's voice hardened. "No, Ella. He's preparing to destroy you. That's different." The next discovery came even more vicious. My mother answered the landline one afternoon, her face paling as she listened. She handed me the phone. "Mrs. Whitmore? This is Jennifer Carlson, the school counselor. I wanted to check in about the conversation we had last month. About your depression." My chest tightened. I never spoke to you." There was a pause. Then cautiously she said, "Your husband told us you've been unstable. He suggested we keep a close eye on Lila, in case your condition affected her." My breath caught. It wasn't enough for Grant to move the money. He was also rewriting me as a danger, planting stories, laying groundwork. That night I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop, combed through my work email. And there it was, a flagged message from Patricia Brennan, my supervisor at the library, dated just a week before I left. "Ella, I received a concerning phone call about your reliability. I hope everything is okay. Please let me know if you need support." The sender of the call? My husband. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. Grant wasn't just isolating me in the house. He was erasing me everywhere. As a mother, as an employee, as a functioning adult. I finally saw the blueprint. Emotional neglect to weaken me, financial theft to trap me, rumors to destroy my credibility. By the time the divorce papers landed on my lap, the world would already believe his version. Unstable wife, unfit mother, better off erased. I told my family everything the next morning. My father's jaw clenched, his knuckles white around his coffee mug. My mother paced the kitchen, muttering, "Calculated. Cold. Cowardly." Marcus leaned forward. "We need to document this. Every transfer, every email, every word he's used against you. If he thinks you're going to disappear quietly, he's wrong." "But he's already poisoned Lila against me," I whispered. My voice cracked on her name. "She won't believe me." "Maybe not now," Marcus said. "But when she's older, she'll see the truth. Right now, your job isn't convincing her. It's surviving him. The word surviving stuck in my chest like a nail. In the weeks that followed, we built a file. My father created spreadsheets tracking every withdrawal, every suspicious transfer. My mother reached out to her retired teacher network, gathering character references that painted me as the mother I truly was. Marcus, who knew the court system better than most, coached me on what to expect if things escalated. That we weren't plotting revenge. Not yet. We were plotting survival. Meanwhile, I stayed off the radar. No calls to Grant, no messages to Lila. It killed me, the silence from my daughter, but Marcus's words echoed. She's siding with him to survive. Give her time. One evening, as I was helping my mother fold laundry, she said quietly, "Ella, do you realize what you've done?" "What do you mean?" "You walked away before he could finish erasing you. That was your power move. He expected you to crumble inside the house, sign the papers out of exhaustion. But you left. You broke the script." Her words warmed me, faint but steady, like a candle in a drafty room. For the first time, I wondered if maybe leaving wasn't just escape. Maybe it was strategy. And yet, the grief lingered. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, remembering Lila's first steps, the way she used to run into my arms after school. I remembered Grant in the early years before the coldness crept in, laughing on beach vacations, carrying Lila on his shoulders. That I asked myself over and over, when did it change? When did I stop being seen? But no answer came. Only the steady, gnawing truth. It didn't matter when. What mattered was now. One morning, Marcus dropped a folder in front of me. Inside were forms neatly organized with sticky notes marking where to sign. "I talked to a friend who knows family law," he explained. "If Grant tries to push the divorce through on his terms, we'll be ready with counterclaims. You don't have to decide today, but you need to know you're not powerless." I looked at the papers. For the first time, instead of fear, I felt a spark of something else. Defiance. That I wasn't going to be erased. Not financially, not professionally, not as a mother, not as Ella Whitmore. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was how far Grant was willing to go. The erasure wasn't finished. His next moves would be even colder, more calculated. And surviving him would mean not just gathering proof, but finding the strength to rebuild from ashes. By the third week at my parents' house, my life had begun to stabilize into a strange routine. Mornings with coffee in the sunroom, afternoons helping my mother with errands, evenings sitting with Marcus when he visited. On the surface, it felt almost normal, almost like safety. But beneath it all, I couldn't shake the gnawing thought. Grant's not finished. I was right. One morning, my father asked me to update my resume. "Just in case you want to apply for something full-time," he said gently. That I hadn't thought about that in years. For so long, my world had been small. Part-time shifts at the university library, filling in the rest of my days with household duties. Grant had never encouraged me to work more, always claiming, "We need you at home. Lila needs you more." At the time, I believed him. Now I saw it clearly. He'd wanted me dependent. I sat down at Dad's old computer, logged into the browser, and froze. An old email account was still open from my last visit. The inbox was cluttered, mostly spam. But one subject line caught my eye like a knife. "Following up on our discussion about Lila's college applications and the special circumstances you mentioned." The sender, Jennifer Carlson, Lila's school counselor. My heart dropped. Special circumstances? I clicked. What unfolded made my stomach twist. The thread stretched back 6 months. The first email seemed harmless. Grant asking about scholarship deadlines, application requirements. But the second message changed everything. "I wanted to share some family circumstances that may affect Lila's applications," Grant had written. "My wife has been struggling with personal challenges, mental health issues, that have made her increasingly unreliable. I've been doing my best to provide stability for Lila, but it's been difficult. Mental health issues. Increasingly unreliable." My hands shook as I scrolled. Each email piled on the narrative that I was distant, erratic, emotionally unstable. Grant painted himself as the heroic parent, managing everything while I supposedly unraveled. Jennifer responded with sympathy, promising to note these special challenges in Lila's applications. There it was in black and white, my husband fabricating a paper trail of my instability. I wanted to scream. Instead, I printed every email, hands trembling as the machine spit out page after page of lies. But I wasn't done. Not yet. For the first time since leaving, I logged into our joint bank account. My father stood beside me silent while the page loaded. The balance. $3,847.3 months ago, we'd had over $30,000 in savings. I pulled up the transactions. Small transfers, irregular amounts, always to the same account. S. Whitmore Personal Banking. Over the course of 8 months, Grant had siphoned nearly $28,000 into an account I hadn't known existed. Always just after big expenses. A party photographer, a dinner, a trip. The pattern was meticulous, like he'd rehearsed it. I whispered, "He's draining us. He's been doing it for months." Dad leaned closer, jaw tight. "This isn't sloppy. It's premeditated." The timeline aligned sickeningly well. 8 months ago, transfers began. 6 months ago, the first email to the counselor. 4 months ago, the silent treatment campaign. 3 weeks ago, divorce papers piece by piece. Grant had been dismantling my life. Then came the phone call that nearly broke me. It was Patricia, my supervisor from the library. Her tone was cautious, almost apologetic. "Ella, I need to ask you something. Grant called last week. He said you've been struggling, that you might need extended leave. He implied that we should prepare for you to step back long term." The room spun. "He said what?" Patricia sighed. "Look, I know you. You've never once been unreliable in 12 years. That's why I wanted to confirm directly. But Ella, I've seen this before. My sister went through the same thing. Her ex painted her as unstable to secure custody and minimize alimony." Her words cut through the fog. "So he's building a case." "Yes," Patricia said. "Be careful. Protect yourself. Document everything." That night Marcus came by. I showed him the emails, the bank records, Patricia's warning. His face darkened with each page. "This isn't just cruelty," he said finally. "This is strategy. He's dismantling you with precision. Emotionally, financially, professionally. So when the divorce hits court, you'll look like the unstable one. He'll win the house, custody, money, everything." I stared at him, hollow. "What do I do?" Marcus leaned forward. His voice steely in a way I'd never heard before. "You do what he never expected. You fight back. You don't sign those papers. You document everything. You get a lawyer who specializes in this kind of destruction. And you remember this, Ella." He tapped the papers, his eyes blazing. "He assumed you'd never figure it out. He assumed you'd stay broken. But invisible women? We see everything." His words hung heavy in the air, cutting through my despair like a blade. That night, for the first time since leaving, I felt something shift. Grant thought I was gone, erased, broken. But I wasn't. I was still here. And I was done being invisible. That night, I spread the printed emails, bank records, and Patricia's notes across my father's desk like pieces of a puzzle. 8 months of sabotage lay in front of me, undeniable and chilling. Grant hadn't lost control of our marriage. He had orchestrated its demolition. Meticulously, ruthlessly. That I whispered to Marcus, who sat beside me. He wanted me to leave. That way it looks like abandonment. Marcus nodded grimly. Exactly. He creates unbearable conditions, waits for you to walk, and then frames it as your weakness. He's painting a story where you're unstable, unreliable, unfit. I looked down at the papers, at my husband's calculated destruction of 20 years, and something hardened in my chest. I'm not signing those papers. Marcus's lips curved into a fierce smile. Good. Now we start building your case. The next morning, my father joined me in the study, glasses perched on his nose. He'd spent 40 years as a civil engineer, but his mind worked with the precision of an accountant. He was careful, Dad said, pointing at the transfers. Small amounts, inconsistent timing. Just enough to avoid suspicion. Then how do we prove intent? I asked. Dad tapped the spreadsheet he'd built overnight. Patterns. Courts don't like patterns, they suggest planning. And planning means premeditation. He slid the chart toward me. Every transfer was listed by date and amount, red lines connecting them to big purchases. The evidence spoke for itself. Grant had been draining us systematically while maintaining a facade of family spending. Mom walked in with a tray of tea, her robe tied tight. I've already called Margaret Chen, remember her? She worked with me at Lincoln High. She'll write a character reference about you volunteering in Lila's classes. Tom Fletcher and Beth Garrison too. People who've known you for decades. I blinked back tears. You're all fighting for me. My mother's voice sharpened. You are our daughter, Ella. And he is not going to erase you. 6 weeks after I arrived, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I hesitated but answered. Ella Whitmore? The voice was warm, professional. This is Dr. Rebecca Walsh, director of the Riverside Library System. Patricia Brennan recommended you. My heart skipped. Yes. I've reviewed your work history, 12 years, cataloging overhaul outreach programs. I'm impressed. We have an opening for senior research librarian. Higher salary, full benefits. It's yours if you want it. I gripped the phone. Just like that. Rebecca chuckled. Not quite. Patricia mentioned your situation. I've been through something similar myself. A husband who tried to sabotage my career during divorce. I know the signs of professional sabotage when I see them. You're too good to let him succeed. Consider this a fresh start. In a city where his lies haven't reached. A new job. A new city. A lifeline. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I want it. Wonderful. Position starts in 3 weeks. Welcome to Riverside, Ella. 2 months into my silence, Lila finally called that I stared at her name on the screen, heart pounding. 3 rings before I answered. Mom. Her voice was different, colder, harder. Where are you? I'm safe. I'm fine. Dad says you're having some kind of breakdown. That you just left without explanation. I forced my voice steady. I'm not having a breakdown, Lila. I left because I was being treated like I didn't exist in my own home. That's very different. But I need you. I have college applications. I need your signature on financial aid forms. Not I miss you. Not are you okay. Just I need you. Then I heard it, Grant's voice in the background, muffled but clear. Tell her she's being selfish. Tell her she's ruining your future. It wasn't Lila speaking. It was him. Lila, I said quietly, I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. When you're ready to talk honestly, without your father coaching you, call me back. Mom, wait. I hung up, hands trembling. Marcus, who had overheard, stepped into the doorway. He put a hand on my shoulder. That was perfect. Don't let them pull you back into their script. I nodded, though my chest ached. My daughter hadn't even asked if I was okay. 3 weeks later, I moved into a small apartment in Riverside. 1 bedroom, second-hand furniture, mismatched dishes. But it was mine. That first night I sat on the couch with Chinese takeout and realized I was content. Not happy yet, but free in a way I hadn't been for decades. I built a new routine. Mornings with coffee at my own pace. Evenings at yoga classes or library book clubs. Weekends at farmers markets or walks with my neighbor Elena. A teacher recovering from her own divorce, I discovered small truths. I liked red wine more than white. I preferred mystery novels to romance. Sleeping in on Sundays without guilt felt like luxury. For the first time in 20 years, my life was mine. 3 months became 6. 6 became a year. Seasons changed, and so did I. Year 1 was survival, learning to sleep alone, cook meals for one, face silence without crumbling. Year 2. I'd started night classes for a master's in library science, the degree I'd abandoned when Grant called it unnecessary. I studied digital archiving, information theory, technology integration. My thesis on preservation strategies for small libraries was published in a national journal. Dr. Walsh brought champagne to celebrate. You're too good to stay behind the desk. I'm promoting you to associate director. Me. Promoted. Respected. Seen that I smiled for the first time in years. By year 3, I'd built friendships. Elena introduced me to her book club. Joyce, a sharp-tongued realtor. Michelle, an ER nurse with biting humor. We called ourselves the Phoenix Club, women who rose from ashes of failed marriages. Joyce said once, "My ex told me I was too loud. Spent 15 years shrinking myself. You know what I learned?" "What?" I asked. "I'm not too loud. He was too fragile." We all raised our glasses. Through it all, I kept one rule. Total silence toward Grant and Lila. No emails, no calls, no social media. My lawyer and Brennan had advised it from the start. Let him think he won. Comfortable people make mistakes. So I stayed quiet, steady, reliable. Paid support on time. Kept records. Built my own paper trail. And for the first time I began to see this wasn't just survival. It was strength. Grant thought he'd erased me. But invisible women? We learned to redraw ourselves. By the 3rd year I realized something unexpected. I liked my life. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the picture-perfect suburban family life I once clung to. But it was real, and it was mine. I traveled to conferences. Chicago, San Francisco, Boston. Cities I'd never visited because Grant always said vacations were too expensive or too selfish. I walked through museums alone, ate at restaurants alone, and discovered I actually enjoyed my own company. I joined a pottery class. Every bowl I made leaned to the side as if drunk, but I loved the feel of clay in my hands. I cooked meals only I had to like. Thai curries so spicy my eyes watered. Meals eaten in silence without judgment. And I journaled. Entry after entry, I poured out the truth. How Grant's cruelty had sharpened me. How Lila's absence ached but no longer crushed me. How freedom felt terrifying but intoxicating. Point 1 entry, written late at night in year 4, still stands out. Grant's cruelty saved my life. If he had been simply neglectful, mildly unhappy, I would have stayed forever. But his calculated erasure was so extreme, I had no choice but to leave. He freed me by trying to destroy me. It was the bitterest kind of irony. By year 5, I was 48. My savings were modest. I rented a small apartment, owned mismatched dishes, and had no property to my name. By external measures, nothing impressive. But what I had was mine. And for the first time I was content. It was a Tuesday in April when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I nearly ignored it, probably spam. But curiosity made me answer. "Hello, Ella." The voice stopped me cold. Grant. 5 years of silence and suddenly his voice in my ear. My muscles went rigid, every instinct screaming to hang up. But curiosity pinned me in place. "I wasn't sure if this was still your number," he said. "It is," I replied flatly. Silence stretched. I heard background chatter, clinking glasses, faint music. He wasn't alone. Then he said it. "Lila is getting married." The words hit like a fist to the chest. My little girl, 22 now, marrying a man I'd never met. Living a life I knew nothing about. "She's marrying James Morrison," Grant continued. "They met in college. Been together 2 years. The wedding is next month." Next month. I swallowed hard. "I hope she's happy." "She is." Then his tone shifted, hesitant, almost fearful. "Ella, you should come to the wedding." I nearly dropped the phone. The audacity was breathtaking. 5 years of silence. 5 years of pretending I didn't exist. And now suddenly I was invited back in. "You want me there?" I asked quietly. "Yes. She's your daughter. You should be there." His voice trembled. That was when I heard it. Fear. Not arrogance, not confidence. Fear. "She misses you," he added softly. I laughed, short, bitter. "Funny way of showing it, Grant. Not a single call in 5 years. Not even on holidays. But now she misses me. People change. Time changes things." "Yes," I said evenly. "It certainly does." I should have refused. I should have hung up. Instead, I heard myself whisper, "I'll think about it." That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my quiet apartment, replaying every word. Lila. Married. James Morrison. Riverside Country Club. Was this an olive branch or another manipulation? I texted the Phoenix Club. Emergency meeting. Tomorrow night. Bring wine. The next evening, my living room filled with the women who'd carried me through the last 5 years. Elena with her calm wisdom. Joyce with her blunt honesty. Michelle with her dark humor. I told them everything. Grant's call, the invitation. Elena frowned. Why now? Why after 5 years? Maybe Lila insisted? I offered weakly. Joyce snorted, pouring wine. Or maybe he needs you to play a role. People don't just remember you exist unless you're useful. Michelle leaned forward. Exactly. They want you to show up, smile politely, make everything look normal. That way their story holds. You're the unstable mother who disappeared, but gracious enough to attend. I sat in silence, chewing on her words. She was right. Grant didn't invite me out of kindness. He needed me there for appearances, but then Michelle asked, forget what they want. What do you want, Ella? The question lodged in my chest. What did I want? Finally, I whispered, I want to see her. Even if she hates me, even if she believes his lies, I want to see my daughter. And then more sharply, and I want Grant to see me, to see what he threw away, to see I'm not broken, to see I rebuilt myself. Elena smiled. Now that's not revenge. That's justice. The next morning, I met with Ann Brennan, my lawyer. She arrived at the coffee shop in her no-nonsense suit, leather briefcase in hand. You're going, she said before I even spoke. I am, I admitted. Then you treat it like a deposition. Observe everything. Say nothing that can be twisted. You go calm, composed, dignified. Let them see you. That's all. I can do that, I said and leaned closer. And Ella? Bring someone if you want. Show Grant you flourished without him. That alone will devastate him more than any confrontation. I shook my head. No. I need to do this alone. Otherwise it looks like I need a shield. I don't. I'm there because I choose to be. And nodded slowly. Fair enough. But remember, your presence alone is power. Over the next 3 weeks, I prepared as if for battle. I found a dress, navy blue, elegant but understated. A haircut that refined without screaming for attention. I practiced answers in the mirror. How have you been? I've been well, thank you. Where have you been? I've been building a life for myself. Why did you leave? Because I was treated like I didn't exist. I chose to exist elsewhere. Neutral. Steady. Truthful. The night before the wedding, I pulled out old photos of Lila, her baby smile, her spelling bee trophy, her teenage laugh. I let myself grieve the years I'd lost. And then I put the pictures away. Tomorrow wasn't about reclaiming the past. It was about showing up, fully present. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and warm, as if the universe had staged perfect weather. I slipped into the navy dress, fastened simple jewelry, applied makeup with steady hands. In the mirror, I saw not the ghost wife Grant had erased, but a woman who had rebuilt herself from the ground up. The drive to Riverside Country Club took 40 minutes. The grounds gleamed with marble, roses, and luxury I'd never belonged to. Guests in designer suits and gowns filled the space. I parked at the edge of the lot, away from the valets and luxury cars. I sat for a moment, breathing. I don't need anything from them. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Not approval. I'm here because she's still my daughter. Because I refused to be erased. I opened the car door, lifted my chin, and walked toward the entrance, and I was ready. The country club felt like stepping into another world. White roses spilled from every arch, champagne-colored ribbons fluttered in the breeze, and a string quartet played music so polished it made the whole place seem like a magazine spread. I slipped into the back row, deliberately far enough away that I could leave if I needed to, close enough to witness. Guests around me murmured greetings, hugged, laughed, the easy familiarity of people who belonged. I recognized none of them. They were part of Grant and Lila's new world, a world that had formed without me. The music swelled. Guests stood, turning toward the back. Bridesmaids in sage green dresses. Groomsmen in immaculate suits. Flower girls scattering petals. And then Lila. She was breathtaking. Lace gown, hair swept up, radiant smile. A woman, no longer the girl I remembered. She clung to Grant's arm as they began down the aisle. For a heartbeat, I let myself simply look at her. My daughter. My baby. My heart. Then her eyes met mine. Shock froze her smile. Her step faltered. The air shifted as though the entire crowd felt her hesitation. She tightened her grip on Grant's arm. Whispering something urgent to him, he followed her gaze. And then he saw me. That was when his hands began to shake. It wasn't subtle. Grant's composure cracked like porcelain. His grip on Lila's arm betrayed a tremor he couldn't hide. His face went pale, jaw tightening, eyes darting back to me as though I were a ghost risen from the dead. Whispers spread through the front rows. Guests exchanged concerned looks. Grant tried to steady himself, taking deep breaths, forcing a smile. But the shaking continued. In that moment I understood. He hadn't truly believed I'd come. He thought his invitation had been symbolic, a way to say we tried, but she refused. He never expected me to show up, whole, composed, undeniable. They reached the altar. James, handsome in his tailored suit, looked at Lila like she was the only person in the world. He smiled, extended his hand, and she took it. Grant released her arm, retreating to the front row. But his hand still shook. The officiant began. Words about love, commitment, unity. Words that should have been beautiful, but to me felt hollow, echoes against the backdrop of what I had endured. I wasn't watching Lila and James. I was watching Grant. He kept glancing over his shoulder, eyes locking on me again and again. Each time his mask slipped further. His jaw tightened, his lips pressed thin, his body stiff with tension. And beneath it all, fear. Grant wasn't afraid of me physically. I posed no threat in that sense. No, he feared what I represented. The woman he had erased, rebuilt, and returned. Proof that his narrative was a lie. The vows were exchanged. The rings. The kiss. Applause rippled through the crowd as the officiant announced, "Mr. and Mrs. James Morrison." Guests cheered. Music swelled. Lila and James began their walk back down the aisle, radiant and glowing. As they passed my row, Lila's eyes flicked to me again. Her expression was complicated. A storm of confusion, anger, maybe shame, but also something else. Recognition. I held her gaze and gave a single nod. A quiet message. I see you. I came. I am still your mother. Then she was swept away by laughter and congratulations. The crowd began shifting toward the reception hall. I rose slowly, heart steady. I had promised myself I would attend the ceremony, nothing more. No reception. No pretending I belonged to this curated world. I walked quietly toward the exit, slipping out into the spring air. Sunshine warmed my face as I crossed the lot to my car. For the first time in 5 years, I felt light. I hadn't failed. I hadn't crumbled. I had survived something designed to destroy me. And here I was, walking away intact. I was unlocking my car when I heard it. "Ella, wait." Grant's voice. Breathless, urgent. I turned slowly. He stood 10 feet away, suit disheveled, face pale, hands trembling. His entire wedding guest composure had collapsed. "You came," he said, as though the words might explain everything. "You invited me," I replied evenly. We stood in the parking lot, two strangers bound by 20 years of history. "I didn't think you actually would," he admitted. His voice cracked. "After everything you did to me?" My tone was calm, almost clinical. He flinched. "After you erased me from my own life," I continued, my voice firm now. "After you poisoned my daughter against me. After you stole money, destroyed my reputation, told lies to anyone who would listen. Which part exactly didn't you think I'd come back from?" His mouth opened, but no words came. "Things just got out of hand," he stammered finally. I almost laughed. "No, Grant. Things didn't get out of hand. You planned every detail. The silence. The transfers. The lies. That wasn't chaos. That was calculated destruction." Shock flickered across his face. Then shame. Then defensiveness. I lifted a hand, stopping him before he could spin more lies. "I don't need your apology. I don't need your explanation. I came because Lila is still my daughter. And because I refused to be erased from her life. I stepped closer, locking eyes with him. My voice dropped to steel. And honestly, I'm grateful. You showed me exactly what I was worth to you. And it forced me to realize I was worth so much more to myself. I turned, opened my car door and slid inside. Grant stood there, trembling, words caught in his throat. I didn't look back. The 40-minute drive home felt different than the one that morning. The trees were the same, the sunlight the same. But I was lighter. Unburdened that I hadn't come to win him back. I hadn't come for revenge. I came to prove to him, to Lila, to myself that I had survived. And that survival was power enough. That night in my apartment, I changed into soft clothes, ordered Thai food, and turned on a documentary about the ocean. Halfway through, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. 4 words. Why did you come today? Not thank you. Not I'm glad you came. Not I miss you. Just accusation. I knew instantly it was Lila. I typed, deleted, retyped. Too needy. Too harsh. Too vulnerable. Finally, I settled on this because you're still my daughter. Even if you've forgotten, I'm still your mother. When you're ready to talk honestly without your father coaching you, I'll be here. I love you, Lila. Always. I pressed send. Then I turned off my phone, set it aside, and finished my dinner. Whatever she did with those words was her choice, but I had spoken mine. The morning after the wedding, sunlight streamed through my apartment windows. I made coffee in silence, the familiar rhythm grounding me. The memories from the day before replayed in fragments. The way Grant's hand shook, the shock in Lila's eyes, the whispered questions among guests. I had walked away. Calm. Intact. Free. For years I thought revenge meant confrontation, forcing him to admit what he'd done. But now, sitting at my small kitchen table with mismatched mugs, I realized I had already gotten my revenge. I thought back to year 1 after leaving. How survival meant learning to sleep in an empty bed without feeling the ache of 2 missing bodies beside me. How cooking meals for one felt like confirmation of loneliness. But by year 5, those same things had become luxuries. I spread out in my bed unapologetically. I made meals spicy enough to make my eyes water and laughed when no one else was there to judge. The life Grant had tried to reduce to rubble had become fertile soil. And from it, I had grown stronger. I enrolled in night classes at Riverside University, finally pursuing the master's degree in library science I'd once abandoned when Grant called it unnecessary. The classes challenged me in ways I hadn't felt in years. Research, digital archiving, systems management. My thesis on preservation strategies for community libraries was published in a national journal. When it happened, Dr. Rebecca Walsh brought a cheap bottle of Prosecco to the office. We drank out of plastic cups and she grinned at me. You're too good to stay behind the desk. I'm promoting you to associate director. That day, I walked home with a spring in my step. For the first time in decades, I wasn't invisible. I was valued. The Phoenix Club, Elena, Joyce, Michelle, became my family. Once a month we gathered with wine, laughter, stories of our failed marriages. Joyce raised her glass one night. My ex said I was too loud. Spent 15 years making myself smaller. You know what I learned? What? Michelle asked. I wasn't too loud. He was too fragile. We all laughed, glasses clinking. Those nights healed me more than therapy ever could. I dated here and there. Daniel, the history professor who could turn the French Revolution into gossip. Marcus, a fellow librarian, who made me laugh but wanted more than I could give. Nothing serious. Because the most important relationship I was rebuilding was with myself. And always silence with Grant and Lila. I didn't call. Didn't email. Didn't peek at their social media. I blocked them everywhere, creating a firewall between the life I'd lost and the one I was building. And Brennan reminded me at every check-in. Let him think he won. Comfortable people make mistakes. So I let him believe I'd dissolved. All the while, I documented everything: bank statements, employment records, promotions, character references. My quiet stability was the sharpest weapon I carried at my parents updated me occasionally about Lila. She'd chosen a college 3 hours away, majored in marketing, joined clubs. She was dating seriously by sophomore year. Each update was like a knife between my ribs. But I stayed silent that I knew I couldn't force her to see me. I could only make sure that when, if she was ready, the truth would still be here waiting. Her 18th birthday came and went without a call. I grieved for a day. I drank too much wine, looked through old photos, cried until my eyes burned. Then I woke the next morning with a headache and kept moving forward. BY year 3. Something profound shifted. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. That I traveled to conferences, walked through art museums alone, ate in restaurants alone. And I realized I liked my own company. I took a pottery class at the community center. My bowls still leaned, but I laughed at the imperfections. I tried cooking new recipes just for myself. I wrote in my journal faithfully, tracking my growth. Point 1 entry read: Grant didn't suddenly become cruel. He'd always been this way. I just refused to see it. His erasure was so extreme I finally had no choice but to leave. In a twisted way, he freed me by trying to destroy me. Year 5 came quietly. I was 48. I had modest savings, a job I loved, friends who wanted my company, and a small apartment that was entirely mine. By society's standards, nothing remarkable. No luxury cars. No big house. No picture-perfect family. But for me it was enough. I had myself. And that was more than I'd had in decades. The wedding had been the final test. For 5 years Grant believed he'd erased me. Yesterday I proved him wrong. His shaking hands were the confirmation. Not because I shouted, not because I demanded answers, but because my presence alone had undone the story he built. That was power. That evening I met with the Phoenix Club. I saw him yesterday. I told them. Joyce leaned forward. And his hands shook. Elena's lips curved into a slow smile. Good. That's your revenge, Ella. Not screaming at him. Not exposing him. Just living so fully that he can't ignore you. Michelle raised her glass. To freedom. The only revenge that matters. We clinked glasses. Later, alone in my apartment, I curled on the couch with my journal. I wrote, 5 years ago, I thought revenge was about making them hurt the way they hurt me. But now I see the best revenge is freedom. Building a life where their regret is irrelevant. Where their approval is background noise. Where my happiness doesn't depend on anyone else. I set down the pen, closed the notebook, and let myself smile because I had done it. Grant tried to erase me, but I had redrawn myself, and this time I was permanent. The weeks after the wedding unfolded with surprising calm. I had expected to be shaken, maybe even regretful. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. Every time the memory replayed, Grant's pale face, his trembling hands, I felt a deep, steady truth settle in my chest. I had won. Not by destroying him, not by exposing him, but simply by existing outside of his control. That was the revenge. Back in Riverside, life moved forward with quiet steadiness. Mondays meant team meetings at the library, where colleagues asked for my input and actually listened. Wednesdays meant book club with Joyce, Michelle, and Elena, where we laughed too loud and drank too much wine. Thursdays meant yoga. Saturdays the farmer's market. It wasn't glamorous. But it was mine. And for the first time in decades, mine was enough. One evening, sitting at my desk, I reread my journal entries from those first desperate months. The woman on those pages was hollow, uncertain, clinging to scraps of identity. The woman I was now had grown past her. I remembered writing, I've been erased, but the truth was I had allowed myself to fade long before Grant began his campaign. I had made myself smaller, quieter, more convenient, until there was almost nothing left to erase. The difference was that now I wasn't willing to disappear again. I thought about Lila often. After the wedding, she had sent only that one text. Why did you come today? I had responded with love. After that silence, part of me wanted to ache, to claw at the void she left. But I'd learned the hardest truth. You can't force people to see what they aren't ready to see. If she wanted to know my side of the story someday, I would be here. If she never did, I would still be here. Because my existence no longer depended on being seen by her or anyone else. Grant never contacted me again after that parking lot. Maybe he realized he'd lost the one thing he craved most. Control over my narrative. Let him stew in silence. Let him explain my presence to his wealthy in-laws, to the guests who had seen his mask slip. Let him live with the knowledge that I had survived him, that I was no longer his ghost. That was his burden, not mine. Sometimes on quiet nights I still replay the question Marcus once asked me. Who was Ella before she met Grant? Back then I couldn't remember. Now the answer is different. I know who she is, that she's the woman who wakes up without alarm clocks, who drinks coffee in her mismatched mugs, who fills her bookshelf with novels she loves, who laughs too loud with her friends, who takes pottery classes even though her bowls are lopsided. She's the woman who survived systematic erasure, who rebuilt herself from the ground up, who learned that freedom tastes sweeter than revenge ever could. One Saturday, standing at the farmer's market with Elena, watching children chase each other between stalls of fresh flowers and strawberries, I realized something important. Peace doesn't mean forgetting. Peace means carrying the memory without letting it define you. For years I carried shame, wondering if I had failed as a wife, as a mother, as a woman. But I hadn't failed. I had survived. And survival had grown into something stronger, wholeness. I still had scars. I still missed the years with Lila that I would never get back. I still sometimes woke at 3 a.m., heart pounding with old fears. But I also had mornings of quiet joy, evenings of laughter, a career that valued me, friendships that sustained me, and most of all, myself. Not the diminished version Grant tried to shape, but the real Ella, loud, flawed, whole. The best revenge wasn't destruction. It wasn't screaming in courtrooms or forcing apologies from people incapable of giving them. The best revenge was freedom. Freedom to live a life beyond his reach. Freedom to stop seeking validation from those who thrived on my silence. Freedom to choose peace over and over again. That night, I wrote my final journal entry in the worn leather notebook I had carried for years. 5 years ago, I walked out of a house where I was a ghost. Yesterday, I stood in the sunlight, alive, visible, undeniable. Grant's hand shook. Mine did not. That is the difference. That is the power. The best revenge is not making them hurt, it is being free. And I am finally completely free. I closed the journal, set it on the shelf, and turned out the light. For the first time in a long, long time, I slept without dreams. And I woke with peace. Thank you for following this story till the end. If you found this an emotional journey of betrayal, justice, and inner strength, please help RevengeAmy reach its first 1,000 subscribers. Just a like and subscribe. Your support will be a great motivation for us to continue bringing more inspiring stories. Click subscribe today and be a part of this journey. See you in the next stories.